How can we start this story? A lot of ways, really. Today, I want to give you a good summary of the life and successes of Walt Disney and the Walt Disney Company. This story will tell some things in order of decades, and some of it will be bringing major points of the story at any given time. Before we continue, like and subscribe so we can grow on YouTube. So let's start from the 30s and 40s. Walt Disney was a very out and about person during these 2 decades. He would often do big and small charity work in his hometowns during the Great Depression. A young Walt Disney would try to give whatever relief he could to help people out during that difficult time period. During this time, he was barely hanging on to whatever Disney money he had and would donate to local charities and community organizations. He also would visit children's hospitals and bring along Disney merchandise to bring joy to kids. Maybe some of his earliest animated features weren't the best, but it's well known that he would spend time with kids and they seem to talk highly of him. In one particular instance, actor James McArthur said, and I quote, "He was such a personable, nice guy that you lost sight of the magnitude of the figure that was sitting across from you or talking to you. I worked for different studios, but this was a family. You came out to Burbank, and this was a family. This was a lot where there was a magic to it that didn't exist. Everything lended itself to being upbeat." Obviously, he was talking about Walt Disney and the Walt Disney Company's environment. During the 1930s, Walt Disney's biggest successful cartoon, as well as his first feature-length movie, was Snow White. It was a huge box office hit, and adjusted for inflation, it earned around $2 billion.
It's called From Ticonderoga to Disneyland.
Representing the East Coast, the Pee-wees from Winston wearing black helmets. From the West, in white helmets, the Scrappers. There's Walt Disney meeting with the officials. The game is about to get underway.
There's no doubt that Walt Disney had some influence in his live-action movies of the 50s and 60s. Even if he didn't write scripts for movies, he would show up on many sets where he could give any perspective on how storylines or what the visual representation should be. He always wanted special effects and visual effects to be as good as possible, so he usually stuck around to give his ideas on that aspect of film. He always pushed for high production values in as many live-action Disney movies as possible to beat any cartoon work that was done before. He thought that if some people didn't want to make cartoons all the time with great visuals, let's beat this with live-action movies, whether he could succeed or not. He would also bring storyboards to show how the stories could be told in a simple or complex ways. Even if Walt Disney wasn't necessarily an actor or writer in both live action and cartoons, he was on many sets and even made a few cameo appearances in TV movies like Moochie of the Little League and its sequel, Moochie of Pop Warner Football. There are so many ways I could tell this story, so we will continue a little bit more on his influence in Disney movies. There is no doubt that Walt Disney was a man of Christian faith, as was shown in particularly live action movies. I remember when I was much younger, I didn't always understand why I was seeing some Christian concepts in old Disney movies. You would think that someone who would have influence over many Disney movies that show Christian characters, major or minor, would show the importance of prayer, would have a few Christian or Catholic pastors in storylines, or any other element relating to consistent Christian values would show that Walt Disney or any other person on set would have some religious affiliation, right? Right? You're probably thinking, well, John, what are these movies? How can we miss them growing up? Well, there are so many old ones. If I would give a top 5 list of them, I'd start with these. Number 1, Pollyanna. Number 2, Johnny Tremaine. Number 3, Kidnapped. Number 4, A Light in the Forest. And number 5, Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier. While I didn't list every religious-themed movie or TV show that Walt Disney or after his time put out, I would stick to old Disney historical book-themed movies where those characters and storylines are obvious. It's so hard to find Walt Disney himself talking about God or his spiritual stances, but at Disneyland's opening day, there were 3 pastors, including his own nephew, who mentions that he knows of Disney's spiritual beliefs. You also had The governor of California at the time speaks slightly more about God and our beliefs as America, to which Walt Disney looks pleased and applauds the governor if you look closely at the video. Obviously, religion was important to the Walt Disney Company. I mean, why is it incorporated in so many live action and very few feature length cartoons? During the Walt Disney era, there were many early movies with good box office numbers. Some are as follows: 10,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Old Yeller, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, The Shaggy Dog, The Epstein Professor, Son of Flubber, and much more. These movies shaped the company as well as the entertainment industry as a whole. As for the Walt Disney Company, what it is today, without these movies, there wouldn't be so many other successful Disney movies that were made decades later, and why they have continued to build more theme parks as well as getting Disney World built into what it is today. 1960s and 1970s were pivotal decades for the Walt Disney Company to make as much money as possible to keep funding their upcoming theme parks through live action and feature-length cartoons. Many box office successes kept coming during this time. Movies like Epstein My Professor, Swiss Family Robinson, Mary Poppins, The Rescuers, Herbie Rides Again, etc. During the height of Disney parks being built, the funds were very urgent during the 1960s and 70s. The films that really got theme parks as well as some of Disneyland and Disney World built were movies like Mary Poppins, Jungle Book, The Aristocats, etc. So hard to believe that so much has changed after Walt Disney died. Roy Disney was co-owner at the Walt Disney Company until 1971. They say the 1970s and 80s was when Disney was going to the dark side. It had many CEOs of the company but had lost direction. The animation was dark, the live actions were a mess, and people had it with what Disney was trying to do in terms of entertainment. There were so many things going wrong during those 2 decades until they gained successes later. Then the 1990s came along, and boy, things changed. Michael Eisner was then the CEO, and he knew what he was doing. He capitalized on animation in a new age. He capitalized on so many things like theme park expansion, strategic leadership goals, merchandising, etc. Animated features like The Lion King, Beauty and the Beast, The Little Mermaid, all ended up being box office successes. One of my favorite Disney feature-length cartoons is The Hunchback of Notre Dame. There were also pretty rough live-action movies during this time, like The Rocketeer, for example.
Hey there, big guy. Remember me, Stacey Jones? Look, I know I don't talk to you nearly enough, and when I do, it's always me asking you for something that seems silly, like that pair of silver boots I wanted at the mall, which looked awesome on me, thank you. But this is a real emergency. Okay, so here's the deal. This is sort of my fault. Rocky might never dance again, and big guy, that's all she's ever wanted. And I know you really like Rocky because she's, she hangs out with you on Sundays and she reads your book, and I mean, come on. She's super cool, nice, and crazy smart. You know Rocky never does anything dumb unless it's some dumb thing I talked her into. So how about this? I'll close my eyes, you do some of your miracle stuff, make it last night again. But this time, put the glass in my foot. If one of us is maybe never going to dance again, it should be me. If you do this for me, I promise you I'll be a better person. I'll be less selfish, I won't be conceited, and I'll even give you back the silver boots. And as you well know, I was rocking them. Please make Rocky okay. Please.
As you've seen, I've been giving a broad picture of what the Disney story was like during the 30s through the 90s. Lots of things have happened in terms of leadership that made the Walt Disney Company what it is today. So far, I've hit the 90s mark, and lots of things have changed in that decade for the better. This video is putting out every positive light about the company as possible to give you the big picture. Many of us watch Disney live action and feature-length cartoons to gain whatever positives that may show. Much of the story changes over time because each decade of entertainment was different. When a decade like the 1980s was hitting a dark place, that's because the leadership in making quality entertainment was gone. Other than Walt Disney, I think it's clear that Michael Eisner was the most successful leader for Disney in many ways. Without his leadership, the failures of the 1980s would have lasted longer. He saw the dark and made it light. He may be one of the most underrated CEOs that Disney ever had. He had shows like The Lion King, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, The Little Mermaid, among others, that did very well and were highly successful for the company that expanded theme parks across the world. The 1990s was definitely one of the best and most successful decades for the Disney story. Let's move on to the 2000s, a different era. Then came the 2000s era, the era for singers and dancers. This part of the story also covers the 2010s era as well. Original movies and modern-day TV shows were brought to life. Just like the old way of making actors as well as singers famous, the 2000s were the chance to make every actor famous in a way that was never done before. There are so many people who worked for Disney that turned out to be mostly pop rock singers like Miley Cyrus, the Jonas Brothers, Demi Lovato, Debbie Ryan, Sabrina Carpenter, and so many others that were massive successes, at least for good periods of time. This era was very different in terms of technology, fame, successes elsewhere, etc. Also, modern set Disney shows were made one by one that would air on modern-day Disney Channel. Whether you liked watching these shows or not, there were consistent themes of family, working hard for what you get, compassion, caring for others, good messages that were in especially 60s Disney movies. Now, just because most modern Disney TV was pretty good for its time does not mean these shows were for all ages or were not without mistakes here and there. But most of the shows that I've seen telling you this story were pretty grounded in terms of good messaging. Now, like the 1950s, 60s, and definitely the 90s, give or take a decade, the modern Disney shows had next to no clear religious characters, like the 50s and 60s decades had movies with clear Christian characters. The 2000s and 2010s TV shows that I've seen have only pushed out two shows with any examples of Christian or religious plot points. Those two shows would be Shake It Up and Girl Meets World. Many of you may debate me on this. If you remember any other Disney show with this symbolism, put a comment down below. Let's talk original movies. In terms of Christian characters, those were very rare in these 2 decades. Drop your comments down below if you remember these movies. So, original Disney movies were its own thing. Decades and decades of original movies do change for better or worse. Some of my favorite original movies growing up were Max Keeble's Big Move, Alice in Wonderland, Maleficent, Princess Protection Program, etc. I'm also calling live actions of cartoons original movies in this context. Just like any other decade, original movies were both flops and box office successes. What's different about these 2 decades is that a lot of Disney TV shows in particular are supposed to appeal to 10-year-olds and adults. Like the other decades, it was hit and miss. This appeal of both movies and TV led to getting plenty of actors out of Disney to make singing careers and possibly join other brands of TV to remain as actors. I believe this era was a huge opportunity for so many people to become multimillionaires, as most of them are right now. But the downside of this era isn't without its criticism. They seem to want some of their TV to be a little, how can I say this, agenda-driven. Now, as someone who believes in Disney to make good entertainment, there are definitely problems with its leadership. You now have Bob Iger, someone who will lead Disney down the tubes until he leaves in 2026. There have been movies, even before Bob Iger got the job as CEO of Disney, that have been box office flops, particularly feature-length cartoons. As you may see some kind of pattern in these films that seem to drift more and more from the original brand of Disney entertainment. As for animated work, in this modern age, they get more and more like an agenda-driven brand of entertainment that doesn't really have much of positive messaging for kids who spend money in theaters to watch them. Of course, over time, many Disney movies and feature-length cartoons seem to have much more CGI and are increasingly violent. Maybe after Bob Iger will get better leadership. He himself has mentioned that he doesn't really know what kind of entertainment that the public wants. Sometimes it's just hit and miss. I'm not saying that the 2000s era forward is taking steps in the wrong direction. I'm saying that the last 2 decades in the story have been just like the decades before, bringing out box office successes as well as box office flops. This story can be told in many ways, whether you like Disney entertainment or not. Like many of us kids, we saw something of Disney somewhere at some time. Disney was founded on hard work pays off, the hard facts of America, and make believe. Even in the strangest of movies or TV shows, there usually was some heart somewhere. The Walt Disney Company has changed so much over the last century. Whether you think Disney is getting better or worse as the decades roll, at least it had a foundational purpose. Different leadership happened mostly after the 1960s, which has changed the trajectory of entertainment as we know it. This is the end of the Disney story.